Hello everyone, and welcome to this recording of Preparing for an Effective Meeting. My name is Sam Byers and I'm a researcher developer within the research and development team here at Cambridge. By the end of this recording, I'm hoping that you're going to feel a lot more confident about preparing effective meetings with your supervisor. Before we get started though, there are factors that we need to appreciate and consider when we are meeting with our supervisor. And the main factor is that priorities between yourself and your supervisor are going to be different. Let's just look at that in a little bit more detail. You as the student, your PhD is your priority, and other things that are going on in the lab, other projects, whilst they will be important, aren't going to be your main focus. And this is going to be the same for your supervisor. They have their work, which is their priority, and whilst you and your PhD is important to them, it's not going to be their main focus. So in order to overcome the differences in priorities that will be between yourself and your supervisor, we need to think about generating an effective communication stream between yourself and your supervisor so that you can communicate effectively and continually with them during your PhD. Communication is key when having effective meetings, but there are also other benefits to hosting effective meetings. Having an effective meeting saves time. Having an agenda helps you to keep on track and definitely on time. It reduces stress, which means that you can achieve more in less time. It accelerates innovation, increasing the quality of the creative conversations that you'll have between yourself and your supervisor during your meeting. It decreases the number of follow-up emails and follow-up meetings that you may need to have if your meeting wasn't effective, because your objectives will be clarified at the end of your meeting. It increases the amount of engagement and teamwork. People are actually going to be enthused to have meetings with you. It increases accountability. It will create an environment where people will take ownership of their ideas and their experiments and their responsibilities. It will accelerate you towards your aspirations, which I'm sure at this point will be completing your PhD. And finally, effective meetings reinforce a positive environment because they foster a positive attitude, because everybody knows at the end of an effective meeting what their responsibilities are for the next meeting that will be coming up. I'd just like you to take a little bit of time with this activity to reflect on your last meeting. Now, this meeting doesn't necessarily have to have been with the supervisor that you have now. I'd like you to just take a couple of minutes to think about who it was with, how you felt that meeting went, and could you have done anything better. So just a couple of minutes to think about the last meeting that you had, and then come back to this recording. Preparing for your meeting is key. Make sure that you plan your meetings in advance. Speak with your supervisor and arrange a time that is convenient for you to meet with them. Once you've agreed that time, think about what goals and objectives you want to have set by the end of that meeting. And in order for that meeting to keep to time and on track, make an agenda and circulate it before the meeting. So why am I suggesting agendas? Because agendas seem quite formal. Whilst they are used in a formal capacity for a lot of meetings, if we look in the business sector, agendas can also be effective in a slightly more informal way because they allow people to prepare for the meetings. This is particularly important for your supervisor. Your supervisor is probably a busy person. There's probably more than one student in your lab. So allowing them to have time to focus on preparing for your meeting will mean that you get their undivided attention during your meeting. Agendas allow you to outline the main topics of discussion that you want to have within your meeting. They allow you to keep to time, which again is really important because time is precious, not only for yourself but for your supervisor. Agendas allow responsibilities and deadlines to be assigned to the appropriate people. And finally, goals and objectives can be set and they can be reviewed on a regular basis. They can be added onto an agenda and reviewed at the next meeting and the next meeting and so forth. So here's just an example of what a typical agenda looks like. It's always good to keep a record of the date, the time and who attended for future reference. You may want to start with approval of minutes from the last meeting. This will just allow everybody to agree that they were happy with what was said in the last meeting. Then you can move on to matters arising from the last meeting. So this is a chance for you to review the action points that were created from the last meeting, particularly if there were deadlines set for the follow-up meeting. Then what you can do is start listing the topics you want to discuss. Perhaps if time is really short, you can assign a start and finish time for each topic so that you know each of those topics are going to be addressed during your meeting. And you could go one step further and perhaps have subtopics under that main topic as well. Again, just to help you make sure that you cover what you want to cover in your meeting. After you've discussed the topics that you wanted to, an agenda always has an AOB at the end, any other business, and this is an opportunity for you to discuss topics that may have arisen between the time that you sent your agenda and the meeting that you're having, or it may be that a topic came up during conversation in your meeting and it's something that you want to discuss, but when it came up it wasn't the right time to. There's always time to summarise the meeting, to clarify the action points that have been set for that meeting so that everybody understands what they're to do in preparation for the next meeting. And then finally, there's time for you to sit down and confirm the date of your next meeting. So keeping on the theme of agendas, what I'd like you to do is take some time now to think about the next meeting that you're going to have with your supervisor and start planning an agenda for that meeting. So take some time now to start planning that agenda, and when you've finished, come back to this recording. So we've discussed how to prepare an effective agenda so that people are focused and know what's going to happen during your meeting. Let's just have a quick look at how we end a meeting. It's always important to make sure that we end a meeting effectively so that people can understand and agree the action points and their role within getting those action points completed for the next deadline or next meeting. So don't assume that everybody has understood everything that has been said in the meeting. Always summarise your meeting with the notes that you've perhaps taken during your meeting. It's always useful to have a pen and a piece of paper or a laptop with you when you go into your meeting so that you can make notes which you can then use to summarise at the end of your meeting. Again, so everybody is understood what has been said during the meeting and they can agree the action points that they have agreed to. People forget. That's not a bad thing. It's the nature of a very busy working environment. So I would always suggest writing up a follow-up email after your meeting. They don't need to be overly long. This is an example of how you can send a follow-up email from your meeting, just summarising the action points that you've agreed to and the deadlines that have been set. So you send this after your meeting, and what you can do is send it again as a reminder along with the agenda that you've written for your next meeting. So just to summarise what we've been talking about today, supervisors are there to help you with your strategic planning. They are an expert opinion in your academic field. They're there to support you learn and apply skills in order to get your PhD completed, and they're an excellent contact and source of feedback during your PhD years. In order to make the most of your supervisors, we need to make sure that we make the most of your time with them. So plan your meetings and don't assume that they will remember everything from your meeting. So always make sure that you have a follow-up email so that they have it in writing, and remind them of that when you send your agenda for your next meeting. Thank you very much for your attention. Bye bye.